Hi, my name is Loretta. I'm making this video because recently I've been thinking about a lot of information of timelines, and people constantly are talking about timelines. They're talking about ending timelines and collapsing timelines, creating new timelines, and I really just had some information that I feel like I wanted to share about my interpretation of what that is, which is um, I think when people say timeline, it kind of gets us stuck into an old type of pattern thinking, which is very linear. That we have these timelines, and they're kind of parallel timelines are kind of stretched out next to us, running distinctly parallel to us, and while there's aspects of that are true, I think timelines are quite complex, very malleable. I feel like sometimes they are running parallel to us, but sometimes they are not. Kind of depends on the degree of the manifestation that you are trying to call on when you're calling to a timeline, whether it's old or whether it's one that you're creating. So this video is really just kind of about my interpretation of what most people would refer to as space-time fabric. So if you take the term space-time fabric, which has been around for a really long time, that people are that people know about. I think in the past, I'll just make a little drawing. In the past, people kind of have it like this, that space time, here's Earth or whatever, but that space time fabric is kind of like this grid. Whenever you see drawings or illustrations of it, on the internet or during talks, a lot of times you see a circular sphere, and then there's kind of like this grid that runs through it. But space-time fabric is really I don't know how to draw it this way. Is three-dimensional, and we have to remember that. So when we're talking about and looking at planets and celestial bodies within the space-time fabric, it is a sphere. It is a three-dimensional object, and so thus the space-time fabric that this celestial body, let's say Earth, exists within, is a 3D fabric. So it has another added dimension to it within its structure. And so when we are talking about timelines, that's very linear, which is kind of an old perspective, but it has this. I feel like it's lacking that other sort of designation of the added depth that we get when we think through beyond sort of two-dimensionally, and especially when we're thinking three-dimensionally and above. So time threads is really about the idea that as we all exist within this space-time fabric, you are sort of a weaver of your own individual piece of fabric that is interconnected to everybody else's fabric, which is the universe has sort of its own fabric that is interwoven with everything else. So you're sort of weaving your individual part of this 3D fabric, but it is connected to everything and everyone around you. And it's not just you and in your piece, and here it is, but your edges and sort of the outer context of what you're weaving, that's all connected to everything else. So people keep saying like timelines, and I keep thinking that's so linear, but thread, the reason I use time thread is you have to imagine that as you're weaving what you're calling your reality, which if we want to say your structural reality, whether it's physical, whether it's energetic, we're talking about this fabric, this energetic fabric from which you are creating your manifested physical reality. And when we're talking about time threads, there is, to me, really no ending of a timeline. There is only what I like to say is either an integrating or receiving or a giving of a time thread. So if you're thinking about, I kind of wrote here, your threads are sort of interwoven construct of your thoughts projected from previous experiences or future experiences. So meaning when you're thinking about a timeline or a time thread, it's really coming off thoughts that you've either had based off of old experiences and what you're calling old time threads, or basically what you're calling the creation of a new one. So when you're, it's like if you have a thought like, okay, you want to manifest and you want a car. If you want a car, let me just do this. If you're here and you want a car, okay, and you're trying to manifest that in your present reality, in your present matrix, there are multiple strands that have to come together in order for you to be able to construct what you're calling a timeline, which I will just continuously refer to as a time thread. And there's going to be basically multiple strands that have to come together. That'll all just be like represented here, to give you this. Oops, this is a little messy. To give you this ability, let's call this. Okay, so the first, the first strand is the car. The car you want to manifest, this has to exist. So that's one thread. You have to have the license. Oops, I don't know how to. I think it's like this. Your license has to exist. You have to be a valid driver in order to manifest. I guess you don't have to be a valid driver, but you have to have sort of the intention of having this time thread that you are going to be driving the car. I mean, we're assuming that you want the car because you want to drive it. And then let's say, what else did I put? Oh, and you have to have the place where you plan on keeping the car. This has to exist as well. So just on a very basic level, you have to have the car that you want in mind. You have to have, let's say you're a valid driver and you have your license, you have to have the license to drive. You could manifest, I suppose, if you have the intention of getting your license, but basically you're not going to be trying to manifest a car for yourself if you're not intending to be a valid driver. So whether you have the license or whether you're like 15 and trying to manifest a car for your future license, basically there's that intention. So these individual strands, they have to come together in order to create what is now sort of this time thread, this new time thread, which is really just a combination of these three individual strands. So once, you're projecting all these thoughts, you're trying to manifest, and so you're calling upon three individual strands to create this thread, which then you'll take that thread once you receive the car, and basically, you integrate, I should say that at this point in screen, basically you start, weaving that as part of your space-time fabric. So any sort of time thread consists of a multitude of individual strands, time strands. And time strands really are pre-existing thoughts or conditions of your environment, or of your mind, of the thoughts that you are thinking. And those all have to be called to. So it's kind of just like how a normal thread is made. You have all these individual strands and they're twisted together to form a larger thread. And then that thread is used to construct larger things. Maybe that goes into a piece of yarn, and then that yarn becomes part of a blanket when it's mixed with other yarns, or so on and so forth. So it's really ideal to think of yourself as a weaver. And basically everything that's in your existence is an existing time thread, which is coming from a lot of individual time strands. And the time strands are coming from different places. Like this car could be a strand from a dealer, or this car could be a strand from an individual person trying to sell the car. Two people, two preconditions, both people have the car that you're looking for, but it's kind of dependent on a lot of other things in the universe and other people's choices will then decide which individual strand comes to you, whether it comes from the dealer, whether it comes from this other person. And a lot of that has to do with people making certain decisions, people calling to certain time threads and time strands themselves. A little bit easier way, I think, to break down how this fabric is existing. And the easiest way I wrote too is when you think of creating a timeline, the idea of a pure creation out of nothing is not necessarily, I would say the truth. What I would say is that you are calling to create the act of receiving the strands and the threads that you need to weave basically the structure of the space-time fabric that you want in your present moment. Any sort of call to creation at this point, I think in our existence, we're calling to something that has already previously existed. So I put every thought we use to manifest is built off a previous structure that already exists. So pretty much everything in your human life, you're calling upon something that you either learned, that either is knowledge in humanity, either is anything, whether it's physical, whether it's energetic work, we're all calling to something that has already been. So it's not an act of pure creation so much as it's creating to receive that which you are looking for. So I kind of drew this other thing, and I'm hoping that this will make be a little clearer. So this is you, right? And then there's kind of like, I put like this, all these different timelines or time threads coming into your existence. And then you have ones that are going out. I'm just going to put it like this. The colors really don't matter so much as kind of the basis of the understanding that we're... Okay. And so when you're the weaver, let's say right here is your, this is your structure. This is the structure of the fabric. It's a three-dimensional fabric. I know it's kind of a cheesy drawing. But here are manifesting. Put receiving. Okay. This might be pre-existing. And then this is releasing. This is giving. And I put this as in creation. I'll just put creation because it's kind of a complicated word. But basically what this is this is you, and you are weaving this space-time fabric. And the threads that are coming into you are pre-existing ones. So pre-existing ones are, thoughts or patterns or time threads that you've already been existing on. So one could be just, your job, your career path, and whatever that is, or your religious belief system and whatever you were raised as. It could be, your thought forms on how you look, how you feel. Then you have another category, and these are manifesting. And so these are timelines or time threads that you are calling to. These are ones that you are actively trying to manifest, whether you're someone that is consciously manifesting or whether you're someone that's just daydreaming or thinking about something that you really need or something that you really want. Basically, these are the ones that you are asking to kind of come in. So your thought projecting is calling these ones. Receiving are different. These are time threads that are coming into your existence by people giving them to you. So these could be people or situations that come up as part of your experience that you haven't necessarily called to, and it may not be necessarily something that you would normally bring about, but somehow this has come into your experience and somebody has brought this to you. So when that happens, you have to make a choice whether it becomes part of your fabric or whether you want to release it or give it away. So on the other side of the fabric that you're creating from, you're going to have the creation portion is really creating from what you were receiving. So that's a mixture of any of these kind of incoming time threads. So you can basically, there's going to be some kind of structured form that exists ahead of you. You know, you're living in your present moment and you're creating in your present moment because your moment is consistently passing through time or forward. There's going to be a substructure that is kind of pre-laid out before you. It's kind of like when you imagine, like in movies, like in Indiana Jones, and the stones kind of come out in front of him because he has that intention that he's about to walk. So therefore, the steps are pre-laid. You do have, like, you know, some kind of manifestation, like I'm going to wake up tomorrow and go to work. So the work time thread that you were existing on before, it's still laid out in front of you because that's part of your regular job. And anything else that's kind of regular like that you are trying to sustain as part of your woven fabric. Releasing it doesn't come directly from receiving, so don't think the colors are indicative of that, but releasing are time threads that have come into your experience that you have been either, you know, pre-existing ones, receiving or manifesting, and you have decided that you don't want to sort of weave them into the full structure of your existence. For whatever reason, you want to let those time threads go. You have either integrated them or haven't, and you just don't really want them to be part of your current reality, and so you are letting those go. We will get more to that. Giving is when you have a time thread that you have, and you are actively putting that time thread into somebody else's existence. So a lot of times giving could be, you know, maybe you found out some wonderful information about, you know, or maybe you became like a Reiki healer or something, and you now want to offer that service to someone in your family that you love, and you just want them to have it. That is you. You have manifested this time thread, this Reiki time thread. You have woven it as part of your structure, and now you are giving it to somebody else. You are trying to basically take part of that thread from your structure and weave it into somebody else's structure. Because right next to you, on infinite sides, are infinite other things that are connected to you. So basically, you know, somebody else is right over here, and you're, you know, giving away that thread so that it can be used in somebody else's beautiful, constructed, woven macrame, if you will, of their space-time fabric. Now, a lot of this is when I think a lot of times when people say ending timelines, there's a little bit of confusion there, because a timeline never just all of a sudden ceases to exist. You're either choosing to integrate a timeline because you've healed it, and you are able to sort of continue to have that thread as part of your existence because you feel like you have either, you know, overcome it, or it's something beneficial to you, or you are releasing it, and that time thread goes somewhere. It doesn't just stop. It doesn't just end. It doesn't just cease to exist. All of the things that are part of our existence, if all of a sudden they choose not to be, it has sort of a domino effect that rolls out from it. And every little decision changes somebody else's reality. So I kind of wrote an example in order to be able to better explain that. So I just thought I would try to more easily explain what I was trying to say in my other video about timelines not ending. I got like a little caught up myself in I almost got like a little confused. So I made this diagram, and it's like a little bit easier to understand. Hopefully you can see it. But we were talking about two situations where the first timeline is you have thought about it and you decided that you wanted to get ice cream, and you know, like, you have a work presentation, you have to wake up early tomorrow, you have to have all this stuff ready for it. But in this one, if you go to get it, in timeline one, you get the ice cream, you know you're going to stay up a little bit later eating it, you're going to watch a little bit of TV, you're going to fall asleep late, and then thus let's just say like you're the kind of person that's apt to sleep in, and then be a little bit late. You can get a little sugar high, and then essentially what's going to happen in the morning is you're going to wake up late, and it's going to start your day off on the wrong foot. And then timeline 2 is also is the opposite, where you know you have to get ready for work. So what you do is you decide you want to go to bed, you pre-organize all your stuff for work, maybe you meditate a little bit, and then you wake up on time the next day. So you're having this moment, sort of like right. So this portion of time is you thinking. You're thinking about whether or not to make one or two your reality. So basically you have two parallel, I shouldn't say, but you have two time threads that you're calling to, two different options. You're kind of like thinking about both. Like, you know, oh, if I go and it's like the store's going to close like in 15 minutes. So you kind of have to make the decision fast. You're not thinking about it for a long time, but this is it. So this is sort of a short manifestation. So you basically think about both timelines and you're like, oh man, and this is the point of decision. Point of decision. And this is where you decide you want to get the ice cream. And what I was saying before is, in this scenario, basically in number one, you grab your keys, you rush out the door because the store's about to close, and then you get in your car and you pull out in front of another car because you're kind of in a rush. There's one light between you and the store, so you make the green light, but the person behind you gets caught at the red light. You get to the store, you're the last customer, and you buy the ice cream, and then you get back in your car and you go home, and it's the same thing. You stay up late, you watch TV, you don't get ready, and you wake up late for work the next day. Lo and behold, the person who's behind you, in the car behind you, also was trying to manifest this ice cream. They had a bad day, and this person has decided on the ride home from work that they also want the ice cream. So it was kind of last minute too. They were like, oh man, they were like on this, maybe they were on the path to go home, go to bed, and then all of a sudden they're like, I really want some ice cream. So this person, not you, so I'll just put like, this is you, and this is other guy. So other guy has also been trying to, so basically what these lines are, like the individual time threads, time strands that make up the thread. So it's kind of hard to see, but basically you have this strand that's making up this whole time thread or timeline that you want to become your reality. This red strand represents you going to bed. So in each time thread, you getting the ice cream and you not, that exists. That's part of your reality. In each one, you have to get up in the morning. You've been thinking about that as part of the manifestation, that you know you have to get up. So there are different realities that will happen depending on your choice, but those are two. Now there's a lot of other strands that make up this thread, but on a very basic level, those are two little strands that are making up both threads that you are thinking about. This person is also calling to the same event of getting this ice cream from this store. They have probably other strands too that make up this thread, but just for the ease of the diagram, we're saying that they're trying to call to this one strand that's part of your timeline, which is to get the ice cream. So now you decide you're going to get it. You are going to stay up late. You do not care. You want this ice cream. So at the point of decision, you're like, oh, here we go. I'm gonna roll with timeline 1. This is timeline 1 coming right to you. Now, a lot of people are like, oh, this other time thread, this ends, like, right? So you thought about it, now you're like, I don't want to do it. But what I was trying to say is this timeline or time, like what I'm saying, time thread, it doesn't just end. It doesn't just cease to exist anymore. It's like, oh, you had this thought, that's it, it's gone. Basically, there are individual strands that ran through both of the time threads that you were thinking about. So now these two individual strands, go to bed, get up, that becomes, so basically you were thinking about both, those strands now become integrated. So it's almost like portions of your time thread 2 become integrated into this timeline 1 because they coexisted in both. And now a lot of people are gonna be like, oh, well, this time thread there was no ice cream. So if I'm on the time thread or timeline that I'm gonna get the ice cream, then this portion of the existing old timeline or old time thread now ceases to exist. But it doesn't. What happens is basically timeline 1 and timeline 2 integrate. They fully integrate into one another. And part of that is because there was a portion of time that you existed in your apartment and you were thinking about both. Your mind, even if it was a short period of time, called to all these individual strands, and some of them are overlapping, some of them coexisted in both time thread or timeline manifestations. And then you're like, oh, I'm just gonna not do that timeline. In your mind, you're thinking, I'm not gonna do that timeline. I'm gonna pick one, which is where I get the ice cream. But in reality, some of those strands that made up both threads are still fully aware in your present conscious. Like, you know, you have to go to bed, you know you have to wake up. But now you're thinking, oh, there's that part of that time thread where I get the ice cream versus not getting the ice cream. So not getting the ice cream doesn't exist. But what happens is it's almost like this hidden strand that exists as part of the timeline 1 that you are time thread 1 that you are now manifesting and weaving into your three-dimensional structure. What happens is the series of events that happen to you. This person who is also calling to get ice cream from the same store at the same time as you, they're calling to this same strand. And they're thinking about it, and they're still trying to manifest it. And for whatever reason, your ability to manifest this, it somehow was stronger than theirs, or just came into reality before theirs did. Maybe you were thinking about it longer, and you were able to make the decision. Obviously, you were, because you were able to scoot out in front of them just in the nick of time. So whatever series of events happened before, you were actually able to manifest this before they were, your manifestation of getting the ice cream. So this person's calling to 1. Now you're thinking, oh, this black strand that was part of this 2, this doesn't exist. But hidden in the midst of these 3 strands, that now here's the strand you wanted of ice cream and the 2 strands that were coexisting as part of the other, all of a sudden you cut this person off. They were stuck at the light. You were the last customer at the store. When they arrived, the shopkeeper was locking up the door and they were not able to get it. So all of a sudden, out of nowhere, they're being fed this alternate timeline, or which for now we would call this strand of no ice cream. So it's kind of funny because in a really, really complex way, you accepted making your reality from a time thread where you were really just focused on getting the ice cream. You knew there was an alternate reality where you didn't get it, but you decided not to do that. You decided to get the ice cream. And somewhere, that little strand, it didn't just cease to exist. This strand became someone else's reality. So this is the important part of understanding that things don't just end because you choose not to involve it as part of your life. Somebody else was really calling to this strand of getting ice cream, and that didn't happen either. So it was like a combination of your ability to manifest this took that strand away from someone else, and it pulled it into your construct, your fabric. And then what happened is, almost unknowingly, this strand that would seemingly kind of appear like it didn't exist anymore was literally part of your extended reality, almost like hidden in a way. And then as soon as you got the ice cream, well, technically as soon as you cut this person off, that strand, that hidden strand of no ice cream, all of a sudden left your reality and became part of somebody else's. So that was kind of the importance of what I was trying to get across before about timelines don't just end. Things that seem like just because they're not part of your reality don't just cease to exist at all. Sometimes, or all the time, they become somebody else's reality. I mean, there is like a parallel reality where you don't cut this guy off and you both get ice cream, but for for the example, this is what we're talking about. So it's so important to know that. And a lot of times it's almost like unknowing. Like you're just like, oh yeah, I'm not even thinking about not getting ice cream. And you're not even thinking about that now could possibly be somebody else's reality. So that's really part of feeding into the idea that we live in this super complex structure of fabric, and our lives are really woven from so many infinite strands, and the strands become woven together, become threads. Sometimes they just say strands. It's obviously very complex, but all of our decisions do affect other people, and all of the individual strands or threads, even whether we think that that they're ceasing to exist because we don't make them part of ours, it goes somewhere. Like that energy of that thought form, can become somebody else's reality. So it's not to say like every time you don't want something, you have to be worried about somebody else not getting it. You don't even think about that. You just manifest that which you want. There could have been a reason this person didn't get ice cream. Maybe there was a lesson there for them. Maybe the whole reason this happened is you both have to learn a lesson, which is that you shouldn't eat ice cream late because you're going to be late for work the next day. This person also tried to manifest, they wanted the ice cream because they had a bad day, so they're like emotionally eating, and now they don't have ice cream, and it's actually adding to their frustration of their day. So now they're frustrated they got cut off and got on the red light, and then they didn't get their ice cream. So maybe this person's reality was, I had a really bad day, let a lot of stuff get to me, I wanted to resolve it by eating a bunch of ice cream super late, and the result of that is now they're being further tested and they're getting more frustration. They're not getting the ice cream because what they really need to do is learn how to maybe assuage their emotions by not eating ice cream super late. And maybe the thing that you need to learn here is don't eat ice cream late. That even though it seems like a good idea too, that in turn ended up making you late too. So I mean, there's a lot more to that picture, but it could be that you both had this experience as a way to learn that eating ice cream late doesn't solve your problem. Or like, maybe it's not a good idea to eat ice cream super late. Like I don't know, and there's like another reality where you make the higher timeline decision and you don't go to get ice cream, and guess what? This person gets their ice cream or something. So, I mean, there's the endless amount of possibilities, but this is just a more kind of broken down version of, how some of these things can still pop up somewhere else, and they don't just dissipate or cease to exist. So when you call your highest time threads, you are weaving sort of this beautiful structure, your space-time fabric. And then I wrote, when you don't, these threads can become tangled and knotted. So basically, if you were to call in one and to be late the next day, say that you ended up staying up late and you woke up late and then you rushed, when you're in a state of rush, you tend to cut people off, you tend to be in a hurry, you're not holding doors. And it actually, so that reverberates out and affects other people because you're now in a mindset of being behind, which is not your highest timeline. That energy that you're projecting out when you're in a hurry can affect other people. So basically, as soon as that time thread, when you wake up and you realize you're late and that time thread isn't perfectly integrated because you're not fully prepared and you start rushing, it's like trying to rush when you're like making this beautiful three-dimensional crochet and you just start like rushing through it, you going to end up, not always, but there's a higher possibility that what would normally be sort of this beautiful structure, it kind of gets a little tangled, it gets a little jumbled, it's uneven. So you're basically put yourself in a situation where you can create this sort of like snarled part of your beautiful space-time fabric that you've been creating. And sometimes what happens is you kind of want to, you realize that that's happening. So you basically are on a rush to work, you cut people off, you don't hold doors. That sets off this chain reaction because other people get frustrated about getting cut off. They get frustrated about you not holding the door, or maybe you just like close the elevator door when you got to work because you needed to get to the floor, and then 3 other people that would have walked to their office on time are now late because they're waiting for the next elevator because you wanted to rush. So all of that becomes sort of this little bit of a tangle in your fabric, and then basically you're just like, when I get to work, I just need to get to work. So when you get there, this is like what people call like sweeping it under the rug, or like shoving the mess under the carpet. Basically, that's exactly what you're doing. You have this sort of like tangled mess, and you kind of know it's there because you know that you're not like, it wasn't like a smooth morning for you. And instead of just like kind of dealing with it, a lot of times what happens is people just like shove that under the rug. So they literally take that part of their beautiful woven fabric and they just like kind of shove it in this place where they can't see it, because to have to like keep, to have to look back and be like, oh my gosh, like I slammed the door on those people and these other people are late, and it's just easier to just push that under the rug and then focus exactly on what you have to do once you get to work. But what this does is it kind of, that when you do that, when you take this little snarled part of your space-time fabric and you shove it behind you or next to you so you can't see it, it literally becomes integrated in the reality of the person that's right next to you, or part of the situation that tangled mess became. So you shove that away, and that tangled mess becomes the reality of, let's say it trips up the the other people that wanted to get into the elevator with you. So it sets them off because now that tangled mess is part of their reality. They either, maybe they got spoken to by their boss because they were late. Maybe they weren't on time for an important meeting. They had to get started without them. Maybe they missed an important call from a client that was a huge business deal. I mean, it could be a number of things. But basically, that snarled mess is now somebody else's reality. That's part of being this interwoven fabric, and understanding that each thread that you take, it has to be integrated or released. That we all sort of need to be aware that when we create a beautiful structure, it allows us to sort of more easily help other people to integrate those parts into them creating a beautiful structure. And then when you pull out a perspective and you're looking at your piece and somebody else's piece, when you see these beautiful pieces of space-time fabric coming together, it makes a larger scale beautiful structure. And the stronger that fabric is, the better decisions that we make, the higher timelines that we call to, the less snags, snarls, and tangles that we have. It's like everybody's building off of what we already have. It's just like each part is getting, three-dimensionally built out. It's connecting more and more and more to other people, to other places, to other dimensions. And so when you can pull back your perspective, each time you pull out, you want the structure to be very sound. That's how we avoid other people getting caught in our messes, caught in our tangles, caught in our loose time threads that we don't want to deal with. So it's important to know that little not a mess, just because you don't think about it for the rest of the day and you're like, oh, I'm just going to like release that I didn't, I'm just going to release that I was late and that I might have, stumbled some other people up, and you just like don't think about it. You're like, oh, whatever, like not a big deal. And that reality, that mess becoming somebody else's reality, sets off like this huge, it's like all of a sudden you have like this snarly little mess in your space-time fabric that you did not plan on being there. You were like weaving this beautiful macrame, and then somebody shoved you this like balled up piece of yarn, and you're like, now I have to like deal with that. And so part of us as becoming more enlightened is, are you the kind of person that can, sit there at your desk and be like, all this, I missed my call, like now I'm late, my boss was unhappy. If you're the kind of person, you might be able to be like, I forgive this person for being late. I forgive that person for being in a rush. I forgive my boss for being upset at me. Some life happens. Sometimes people are late. You're the kind of person that can take this snarled mess and kind of like find the end in the knot and sort of integrate it into your woven fabric, and that's it. The knot stops there. So you're able to kind of use that, accept it, and then integrate it into something else. But a lot of other people are not like that. They get the snarled mess, and then they're like, and they get frustrated. They don't know how to forgive you. They get frustrated about this mess being part of their reality. And then basically what they do is, maybe now they're short with other people at work, or they go home, they kind of have a situation at home with their partner or a roommate or a friend, and because they're really just aggravated about all this stuff at work. So that little snarled mess, they're not somebody that can detangle that. They're not somebody that can take that thread and weave it into something else. They basically just like pass that knot right on through to somebody else too. Like they kind of just pass that snarly, or maybe it's not so snarled, but it's kind of like this frayed, raggedy time thread because you weren't really able to deal with it. And now you're like giving it away to somebody else, asking them to just kind of like deal with it too. That's what happens when we like take out our emotional frustration from a situation on somebody else. It's like, you take this thread, like I don't know what to do with it. That's why it's important, when we have all these interactions, that if we are people that are really working on, following this path to, but not even enlightenment, but just working on being, good people, working on trying to not just call on our highest timeline, but to help people call on theirs, which is, to understand that certain situations come to you because you're able to handle them, and certain situations come to you as a test to see, if you're growing and if you're learning. But this original person that sort of shoved that knot under the mat, say like 15 minutes after you get into work and you're like settled, maybe you were the kind of person that you're like, like I kind of know those 3 people, they work on the floor below me. Like you go down and you like apologize, or you ask for a little bit of forgiveness or whatever. You go down and you basically try to you're like, oh man, I shoved that under there, but like I feel really bad. Like I kind of know that kind of like threw like this whatever mess in your plate and kind of start you off on the wrong part of the day. If you're the kind of person where at least once you get settled, you can go back around, and at least what you're doing is not allowing that to become like this horrible nest for other people to get caught up in. You're at least going back and saying, you know what, like I can't undo that naughty mess that happened earlier, but I can take that thread and try to at least make it into something else. And I know it's kind of become part of your realities, but I kind of want to take that back, and I kind of want to amend that and put it back into my sort of like my structure, so you don't have to deal with any sort of reverberations of my actions. So what that is you going down and apologizing to these people and hopefully making it right. I mean, you can't change what happened, but at least you can sort of quell any negative emotion that might have come up for these people based on you closing the elevator in their face. So that's you at least taking that and reintegrating it, and which is, when you say, it's like not ending that timeline, like shoving it, like even like I think for a lot of people just being like, oh, I'm just gonna like release the energy of like me having a bad morning because I was late. That's not ending a timeline. That's not sort of integrating it. It's literally just kind of shoving that time thread somewhere else. And so in some people's perspectives, I think they're thinking like, oh, I ended it because like I'm not letting it get to me. Like I've released the feeling. But it's not ending it. Like this is, I think, where a lot of confusion comes in, and people are like, oh, that was like a negative thought form, negative experience, and I ended that timeline because I've released my feelings, but it didn't end. It went somewhere else, and it became somebody else's reality. And so we as people have to understand that we are so integrated, and every thought and action as part of our experience that we are integrating or letting go, it goes somewhere else and it has an effect. Nothing ever just stops or ceases to exist. It just becomes part of somebody else's reality. And it's kind of like I put, if you are, I put here, as the weaver of your space-time fabric, the threads, like I was saying, they don't cease to exist. So if you're not weaving or directing it, a thread, it's left to direct itself. Even sometimes this is not a situation where like you had a direct effect on somebody, but the example I put is if you lie, say like a small lie, right? But it creates like a little bit of a mess. And you're like, oh, I'm just going to ignore it. Maybe you lie to somebody that you don't talk to very often, and it kind of created a little bit of a mess, like in a situation, just you told one lie and it kind of like snowballed or something, and you had to kind of create this whole situation that around this lie that you told, and then but you don't talk to this person, so once you guys ended the conversation, you're just like, oh, I'm just going to ignore it. But that lie you told that person, even though you don't talk to that person very much, got spread around. So basically, that lie was a time thread, and you had it woven into your existence, and then it kind of created this mess. Like it created this little tangle, and you were like, okay, I'm just gonna like ignore it, or I'm sort of like ending this time thread. I'm just not gonna talk about it anymore. But if you're not taking that thread and directing it, and either weaving it into your existence or amending it, sort of letting somebody else weave it, it weaves itself. Like it literally just doesn't disappear or dissipate or like collapse into nothing. It literally, that lie is now being told, inadvertently, that this person doesn't know it's a lie, but that information gets passed on. That it's like that lie is its own thread, and now it has its own like momentum, and it's literally just like creating its own tangled reality. And I just put like the lie keeps getting passed around, creating a much larger mess than if you had like maybe say like an hour later had just called this person and said, you know what, like I just told you that and it's not entirely true. And I just want to kind of tell you that now before it turns into something else. When you do that, you're literally, like I was saying before, you're taking that thread and you're redirecting it, and the intention is to integrate it back into your existence, or at least not allow that thread to either feed itself. And I say feed itself because if you told a lie to a person and they knew it was a lie, and then they chose to pass it on, that's them directing that time thread. But if somebody just like is told something and they don't realize, and then they're just like telling a story and they don't realize that at all that this is sort of not true, that's what I kind of mean. Like the lie kind of almost like directs itself, because it's not somebody has the intention of passing this on. They might even have like the intention of like, oh, I'm like telling this story, they think it's something positive, but really it's like there's no truth to it. So it's kind of a delicate area of whether, if somebody knows a lie and you're sharing a lie together, and then you're kind of like feeding it to people, you're each directing, or you pass it on and now this person's directing it to somebody else's existence. But really this thought form has its own energy. It's just like creating its own way into other people's space-time fabric, and it's, every time it does, it makes more and more of a mess. It literally knots up, and then it kind of tangles all these people together, whoever has heard this lie or where it's been passed to, and at some point that's all still attached to you, and at some point later in life, or later that day, or whenever it is, you're going to have to deal with it. And the more times that thread weaves itself through other people's fabric, the force of which it's going to have when this comes back around into your existence, it's like this thread is so caught up in so many other things. You are literally going to have to deal with so many more people and trying to correct this than if you had just, like I said, redirected it and integrated by coming clean and just telling this person, I'm sorry, I don't know why I said that, I just said it. But before it gets out of hand, you just want it, so you're immediately kind of recorrecting it. Our space-time fabric is so close that everything around us includes people, objects, other living elements, plants, trees, animals, and that you can't forget that the edge of your portion connects to someone else or something else. I put to someone or something else's part of creation. It's like you have to remember it's all three-dimensional. It's not just like this little carpet laid out in front of you that's flat. It's like this whole three-dimensional fabric. It's almost like, if you're thinking of like honeycomb, but the honeycomb is made of a lot of individual threads that are all being interwoven. So anyway, I have some other information about collapsing old timelines, and integrating them, and what that really means. And I think what I'll do is do a separate video and just see if anybody has any information that they would like to share, their thoughts on the idea that this is space-time fabric that we are all creating from. And, we have threads that literally run out, not just to the things around us, like, oh, my house, and oh, my dog, and oh, my wife, or my husband, or my children. Then there's threads that run out to your work, and you have threads that connect you out to the people that you work with, or your old hometown, or you have threads that connect to, five-dimensional beings, if you're in that kind of place in your life. There's literally almost, it's, I don't want to say infinite, because that is a scary idea to people, but there's so many threads that have already become part of your existence, especially if you're an adult or older and you're watching this, you already know. And it's such an important time now to decide, okay, what part, I'm weaving this beautiful thing. What threads do I have that have been there, that are kind of like, you have threads too that are literally like hidden, that came out a while ago in the structure you built 20 years ago, but that thread's still like running through there. And that can be almost a little bit confusing. I was like just trying to decide if I should talk about that now. But I think maybe I'll just get into it now, and there can always be a separate video. But this is the idea of collapsing old timelines, which is part of integrating the receiving and the giving. And I think if I just draw this here, it'll be easier. So this is kind of two-dimensional, but we'll just think of it this way. Say there's like a person and they're weaving a beautiful rug. I don't know if you've ever seen like looms, like the way women kind of weave, but say there's an infinite amount of colors of threads that are being fed into this woven, and let's say that the fabric is like this, and let's just say that this is where you're presently weaving now. Let's say you had an old traumatic experience that happened to you. So let's just say in all of these infinite amount of colorful threads, you have a black thread. And that black thread popped up right here in this beautiful rug that you are creating. And that black thread is representational of a traumatic experience that you had. Now, this black thread only popped up visible to your experience of what you're seeing, of what you're creating here. And then right after it, this thread didn't just end, it didn't just leave. It's literally hidden under all the other structure of this rug that it's sitting upon. So that individual thread is still woven into your existence. It's still existing there. And you're literally just putting all these other beautiful colors over it. And let's just say, your rug was kind of like beginner in the beginning and it wasn't that great and you knew it could be better. And as the years have gone by, you've gotten better and better and better at weaving. But that thread is still there. It's still part of the base structure of the rug that you're working on. So what I put here is this. So basically, this thread hasn't been properly released or integrated, meaning you've kind of hidden it in the background of all the other rug that you've been working on. You haven't necessarily, and maybe there have been points where like little blip. Let's just say there's like little blips in your rug where it's come up. We're going to use an example that this little patch here was you had a relationship and your partner cheated on you. And your partner cheated on you, and basically that's this little traumatic blip. It was a really hard breakup. It didn't go very well. Let's just say in the past that, so this is a breakup. let's just say that these other points are your partner, your ex-partner calls you. So, it was really traumatic. This person knew they did something really bad. Let's just say, because this does happen with people sometimes, that you tried to remain friends, that you were really close before, and so, or even let's say you have, so basically you tried to stay in communication. And there have been these little random blips. The thread has come up, and it's been like your ex has called you out of the blue just to kind of catch up, see where you're at. So you're kind of still tethered, you're still connected. But in a lot of the work that we're doing now, you know that you kind of like need to go back. You need to call on this old timeline. You need to deal with the trauma that happened to you, and you need to release. So we'll just put release or integrate. And the difference between the two is there's a point where maybe you just realize, and depending on how developed your emotional body is, you have decided that you don't want to be connected to this person anymore. That every time this person calls you, it calls up this trauma, and you have that rush of feeling, of that hurt, of that pain. And let's say you're just in a stage of your development where you're not ready yet. Like maybe you're not ready to fully forgive this person. Like maybe you just like haven't gotten to that level yet. But you at least got to the level of understanding that this like blip that comes up every once in a while, it's not helping you get to the point of like forgiveness. All it's doing is regurgitating this negative feeling that you have about this situation, about this person. Maybe it makes you feel inadequate somehow because they cheated on you. And so you at least have reached a stage of admitting to yourself, this is really unhealthy. The fact that we continue to try to be friends. And for a lot of people, it's like every time they call, I just like want to pick up because there's that part of you that remembers all the good memories, and you kind of like love this person that way. And so what this is these blips where you communicate, that's you still being in love with this idea of who you were like way back here, like before the trauma happened. And it's kind of almost calling to something that really ceases to exist at all, because the whole relationship has changed once this event happened. So in this case, you make this decision you just don't want to communicate anymore. You just don't want to, you just don't want to be friends. And so you finally make this decision, and you're like, oh, black thread, get out of here. And so this time thread is you not contact anymore. Okay? So that is one option for your reality. The second option of integration is that you've reached a point in your learning where you have come to the stage where you are able to, or have already finally been able to forgive this person. You've been able to forgive yourself for maybe staying in contact with them when it wasn't healthy for you. You're able to, forgive yourself for feeling bad when you shouldn't have felt bad. It just wasn't a great relationship for you. And you've sort of been able to come into your own healing enough. And you kind of know this person just like keeps you on the land because, maybe they still feel, I don't want to say, maybe they still feel guilty about it. Maybe they just like don't know how to let this go themselves, or maybe they just like kind of have been hanging on to it, waiting for you to kind of like come around and give them this forgiveness that they need. Like they haven't been able to get past it themselves. So when you're at the stage of integration, what happens is you don't necessarily release this time thread. Maybe now you're the kind of person that instead of answering when your ex-partner calls you, you've healed yourself, and now you have situations in the future where you're like, I can continue to be friends with you because I loved you, I love you, I can come to the understanding this relationship just wasn't the best for me, wasn't the best for us. It wasn't, that there are other experiences that we were meant to have. But I'm able to be friends with you, and not only be friends with you, but I want to have future interactions with you where I'm able to help you also release release the negative emotions. And I want you to be able to see that I have come into my own understanding that we can have interactions where I can feel like, I'm in control in the sense that I'm not taken back to the trauma, to the negative part of what happened here. I'm seeing the beautiful part of who we are now. So, like, one thing I wrote is like, instead of you staying connected because you still love this old version of you and them, you stay connected because you care about helping them be healed as well, which is you sort of love the present you and them. So it's not, it's no longer you being in love with the old idea of you, which is why this is happening. It's you being in love with the idea of the present you, which is a lot of the work that we're doing now, is to be fully present and not be allowing these old things to kind of control your reality. So in that case, you keep the thread and you keep weaving your fabric, and the thread is there, and you're really able to integrate that. So I know that there's like a lot of different. I was like watching some videos too, a lot of different ideas about what collapsing old timelines is. And I think collapsing, really, when you're like bringing timelines together, that can be considered integration. I heard this other one woman was saying too, like this woman wanted to break up with somebody, and then all of a sudden, she'd been thinking about it, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, she was like, oh, I think we should stay together. And she was like, I could just see like that timeline that she had already been on, where she was thinking that she was going to break up, like collapse. And it's like, there's so many, it doesn't just, collapse is, I guess, a funny word to be using. And I'm just trying to, I guess, get a better grasp on like what people really think collapsing means and how that affects. But she was like, I saw that timeline like kind of collapse, and it's like, it wasn't, that timeline or time thread, it still exists as part of your past because you had all these past memories of having all those discussions. So in a way, it kind of, and I don't know if it was her idea, it was like that timeline collapsed into this new time thread that she was creating, which is now all of a sudden, she wants to stay with him. And so maybe it was, honestly, having all those discussions about breaking up. Maybe somehow that triggered her into understanding better the situation and getting to a point of maybe something happened and she forgave him, and then she was able to make the decision to stay. So I was like, this idea of just like this timeline that had already been existing, just like disintegrating, isn't really the reality. It's like that timeline just collapsed into, I guess people use collapse, but I like to use the word integrate. That timeline all of a sudden just integrated into this, her other parallel time thread, which was that they would say, so you had one where they were going to break up, and you had one where they were going to be together. And she had kind of been calling to this time thread, and then this one was kind of like in the background, and then all of a sudden this collapsed, or well, I say integrated into this timeline that now became, because it is, something that was in existence can't just like not be in existence anymore. So basically, it was all the sort of experience that happened when she was calling this timeline in and having all these actions to kind of do this breakup, that essentially was integrated into this other timeline of them staying together. It probably was a lot of the conversations that she had that somehow made her come to this different decision. But it's not like that was there and then this other one was here and then all of a sudden this one was just like failed to exist or collapsed in structure, just wasn't there. It absolutely was integrated somewhere. So I guess the overall point of the video is really about the integration of time threads and understanding that each thread comes from a numerous amount of strands depending on the person and the situation that you're calling to, and that when you collapse things or end things. They really aren't ending, and they're not collapsing in the sense of like disintegrating and ceasing to exist. They're becoming integrated either into your structure, into your fabric, or they're becoming integrated, somewhere else. Every decision you make will affect the future outcome of somebody else. So, if you don't integrate it or have it become part of your existence, then it's released and it goes somewhere else. Obviously, I think that there are some more complexities to, a lot of these are very basic, but, the further you go out in perspective, more complicated it can become. But just being aware that timeline is a very linear idea. It's a very, I would say, older thought projection at this point, that timelines are just like stable things that run next to you. It's like you could be creating a timeline, to get coffee, but maybe your friend is like trying to create this timeline where you guys leave and go somewhere, and depending on, each of your ability to manifest what you want, that timeline, you think it's like running right next to you, all of a sudden it's like and goes off here because that person was able to manifest the future that they wanted, which was that you don't get coffee. So that's why I said, it's like a time thread, and you're both calling to different things, and then all of a sudden things get integrated in different places. Sometimes other people's manifestations and ability to call to strands or threads actually takes the threads that you have called to, and they get integrated somewhere else. So the timeline isn't just something that runs parallel to us. It's literally running, I wouldn't even say parallel, but these time threads are coming into creation and then dissipating, in the sense that you could have 5 strands coming in to create one time thread, and then all of a sudden, because of other people's manifestations, maybe 2 strands go off somewhere else. So the time thread that you had, it's almost like the strength of the thread that you need to manifest at part of your structure has to do with your ability to call to all these different strands. But if you are, and the more strands you have, it's just like rope. It's like the thicker the thread is, the stronger it is, and then you're able to really build off of it. But if you have something that's calling, and it's calling all these strands, and then strands are splitting off because of other people's decisions and other people's manifestations, it becomes all of a sudden that little thread that you needed that was really strong becomes, in a sense, not as strong, because 2 of the parts that you needed to manifest that time thread or timeline are now off somewhere else. So it's really about integration. It's about the act of creating to receive, and just remembering that, where everything comes from, it's all coming into your existence, and it's not coming just from behind you, but it's coming in a 3-dimensional sense, and it's going out, creating, or you're building, so to speak, building this part of your space-time fabric, and it's just so connected to other people as well. So I kind of just wanted to put this message out there, because I keep watching and hearing so many videos about people calling timelines, and I keep thinking, gosh, that's so linear, like time as we know it, doesn't exist. But even if we really wanted to understand it, time is sort of this internal structure that's kind of looping around, and everything kind of gets flip back around on itself. I had this other picture which was kind of, I think, almost a little complicated to understand, but it was like, I'll draw it because this is a little bit more complicated, what people might call. But I had this like this is a vortex, right? This is like a vortex, and so I just had this complicated. It's like probably a lot more beautiful than this, but so what this is basically, if you imagine, this is because time is eternal, but these are all this is very basic, but this is all of this is just this vortex of of the infinite amount of time threads that we have to manifest from, and then basically, like, if this was like if this was the universe, you know, these come out and they become part of this structured reality, part of this space-time fabric. And if you were to zoom in, it'd be like this, and then there's another portion here, and maybe there's another portion here, and this is all connected to other things, and this is connected to other things. And so this is your little space piece, and this is someone else's, and that's something else's, and this is something else. And then if you zoom in here, it's just more of that. So at each level, it's just all these. This is like your beautiful three-dimensional fabric, and these are threads and strands, and this is more three-dimensional fabric that's being created by something else and something else. But the idea is that even as these go out and they get interwoven, there's just like these threads that just get interwoven, that it comes back, it goes in somewhere, and then basically it has the ability to go back out wherever it is. It's just kind of like this continual vortex that we are creating. We are creating this this is like an infinite vortex of space-time, strands or threads like that we're all creating from, that the whole universe is structured off of, and it's basically, it gets recycled and repurposed. That the strands, there's never any like more strands or less strands. That it's almost like how energy is, that there is sort of like this, and in reality it's probably an infinite amount of energetic strands that we can use to create our reality, that are being created to create the planet's reality, that it's created the solar system's reality, the galaxy's reality, and then the universe's reality, and then the cosmos's reality. But basically, the way that we are all weaving our structure on all those different dimensional levels, all of those threads have opportunities to go out, become part of different realities at smaller and smaller levels, and then basically it goes, there's a place where it goes back and then goes back out again. So that's kind of like I was actually hesitant to draw this because I was like, it's gonna be a little complicated, but that's kind of like, a way to think about the eternalness of the time thread structure, the space-time fabric structure, that it is, there are threads just being like, not just like here, but like I said, you could have a thread that's like running out to the moon if you're just like someone who wants to be an astronaut, wants to go there, or somebody who's been to the moon and you're constantly projecting your thoughts and ideas to experiences that you had there. These threads go out to so many spaces. These strands go in and out of so many spaces, and then they come back into other places. So it's a constant sort of recycle. It's almost like there's a vortex out and a vortex in, and there's just like a constant flux to how all of that sort of woven structure kind of coexists. And part of, I think, the work that we do now is making sure that we're not like trying to make these really nice structures. And when I say beautiful, I mean beautiful to everybody individually is different, but it's about making a structure that's solid for other people to be a part of. It's making a structure that is sort of beautiful in the sense that other people look at the space-time fabric that you've created, they look at your life, and they're moved by it. They see something, if you're somebody that's like, created this beautiful vortex space-time fabric of being an energy healer and helping people raise their consciousness, and somebody else looks at your life and they're just like, wow, I'm really moved by that like makes me want to do something like this with my life too, which isn't just about like, it's about helping people, it's about raising people's vibrations, it's about getting people on a higher frequency. And we do that by having these beautiful structures, and the beautiful structure really comes from the resonant frequency of you. I wouldn't even just say loving people, but it's about caring about not just you, but caring about us as a species, caring about the planet, caring about our place in the galaxy, and the galaxy's place within the universe. You kind of just keep going out like that, and a lot of that is, it's like the more beautiful you can make your portion it allows other people who maybe haven't been as focused or been aware that they are weaving this structure that is essentially their life experience to be able to look at that and be like, oh, dude, that's like amazing. I mean, like in the last year, I've had so many instances where I'm like, oh, dude, somebody's doing that. And like, that sounds so awesome. Like, I want to do that. And that's really me in a very subconscious way, just being like, they got this beautiful structure going on over there, and I want to get all woven up in something like that, you know? Like, you want to be able to do that, but what happens is when you encounter people that don't care or, like, go out of their way, and you look at their life and it's kind of like whatever hot mess, or you look at somebody's life and they're, like, really mean, they don't care about people, and they're not treating people how they want to be treated, you know, the golden rule. Basically it's just like this snarl tangled mess, and what happens is it's almost just like this spider web, like you just get caught in it, and then it's just like the more, you know, like the more you're struggling, it's like the more trapped you get. You know, that's a little confusing, but basically, like, when you see that and nobody's doing anything about it, that tangled mess that is somebody's life experience, that whether they're choosing to manifest it that way or not, that's attached to like everybody else's experience. And when we as people, if I'm also connected to that and I'm like, I don't want to do anything about it, like I'm just gonna do my thing, like I don't want to say anything, like I don't want to help, probably at some point that thing is going to become part of my existence, especially if I'm somebody that's close to this person. But I kind of treat every day like, you know, I always have the opportunity with people that are like that I come across, that, you know, if we truly live by the golden rule, which is to treat other people how we want to be treated, you know, to try to not be judgmental about why somebody's at the place they are in their life right now, or why they're acting a certain way, that we can always call to that highest timeline, just be kind people, be nice people, um, you know, treat them how we want to be treated, which is to be treated, you know, kind of without judgment, or to be, you know, given forgiveness, even if we, you know, even if they haven't asked. And that's a really big step for people. But, you know, it's being the person that's like, oh, I'm making this beautiful, you know, three-dimensional macrame space-time fabric, but I can take some time to kind of help you detangle part of what's going on there. And, you know, you have, and it's even sometimes it's like, oh, you have some of these like threads that just like are making a mess in your life. Let me take some of those and let me weave that into my existence and help you out. And that's like what we call healing. Like when we heal other people, when we touch other people that way, we are literally trying to take some of those threads that people just can't deal with, or haven't been able to manage, or just don't even realize are leaving them in this tangled mess, and we're saying, let me take that, let me work that into something. And if you get to a point in your life where you're, you know, can handle it, or you want it back, then you give it back, or you just weave it as part of your existence, and then you mend it, and you know, let it go, you release it, or you give it to somebody else. And a lot of that work is, we have to work together. You know, we're a community of weavers. We're like a worldwide community of weavers of this fabric. And, you know, we're at a point now of global awareness where, you know, that weaving that we're doing, that's like attached to things just beyond just our planet. You know, and that has like a huge effect on other bodies in the solar system, other bodies and places in the galaxy. And we have to start being so mindful now that our, you know, our microcosm is our macrocosm. So, you know, if we're having messes and not being good weavers, you know, it affects the structure of everything else. You know, Earth is flying through the universe and flying through the galaxy. And so all the time threads that are literally being like fed into planet Earth and coming out of planet Earth, you know, because of what we're trying to weave as a culture, as a worldwide sort of civilization. You know, if it's like a snarly mess outside of Earth because so many of us don't care and we're not being aware, you know, that becomes some other being in some other dimension's reality. And so I think we're at this level of understanding that, you know, your microcosm is your macrocosm. So you have to be so reflective of what you do as an individual on an individual level, and understand that that is essentially also affecting things maybe even beyond your comprehension. But it's important sometimes to if you can't think about that, and you can't be, to just focus on you, and to just focus on what you're creating, and to just try to make this nice, beautiful space-time fabric that is something that can, really touch other people, like literally and figuratively, um, and then that's really the best way for us to kind of like co-create. So anyway, this was kind of a long video. I was gonna cut it in half, and then I kind of just wanted. Sometimes balls like rolling, so you just need to keep going with it. I have no idea what other people think. I've never heard anybody else talking about this, but I really wanted to get this out there so that I could find out what other people are, what other people think about being part of this space-time fabric, and being weavers, of these time threads, that we are all creating from, or creating to receive, or however you want to say. If you want to say creating, that's fine, but that we are creating, that we are weaving, and what other thoughts are out there. So please feel free to comment and or shoot me an email if you have more information, or if anybody even wants to chat about it. I'm always open for chatting about it. I'm going to try to be posting other videos too, but this one I thought was kind of important to get out there, since, timelines are becoming such a discussed thing right now. So I appreciate, I greatly appreciate, and feel with so much gratitude for everybody who watched the whole video. I hope it was something interesting, and something that is a good conversation starter for people, and hopefully beneficial to you being a really wonderful weaver of your own light. All right, thanks so much. Bye.